Hello everybody, Buddy Webb, Midland, Texas. I'm going to do a video for you today that I'm going to call Secret Ski Vacation. And the weekend before the murder attempt on my life, I found out, I was told by the ex-wife, that my family went on a secret ski vacation and they didn't invite me. I really haven't talked that much about that, and I pray that they wasn't up there planning my murder. I mean, I seriously do. I have a lot of questions, and what we know is somebody tried to kill me in my house, and so many times I've suggested and hoped that maybe somebody's threatened them, and that's why they haven't helped me and been on my side as I expect them to be. I think we all feel like that. If somebody's breaking your home, then family's supposed to have your back. And I feel that way too. So, anyways, what I did here is I drew up a little outline of the history that was going on the month before. There was a lot of things going on just within the month before I'm ambushed and shot before the murder attempt. And so I'm going to hit them real quick. And a lot of these I've got separate videos on. They're longer stories, and so I'm just going to hit the highlights on them. But on December 7th, 2011, okay, my mom dies mysteriously. I've got videos on that. As I said before, I talked to her about an hour before she died. She said, pray for me, Buddy Wayne. I said, sure, Mom, I pray for you or not. No, Buddy Wayne, I'm serious. And an hour later, she's dead. And then I found out my brother lied to me about what was going on, and my dad, and I turned that into the Hobbs Police Department, and also to the which went to the Lee County Sheriff's Department, who told me they didn't find anything. Interestingly, was it 2 days before Mom died, the Lee County Sheriff, Rod Kaufman, supposedly committed suicide, and I wondered if that wasn't something else, and that wasn't connected to this crime ring and all these other, because there's believed multiple murders and extremely wealthy people that are involved in these crimes. And I knew Rod Kaufman. He was in my class. I taught the computer networking class at the junior college in Hobbs, and super nice guy. I mean, you would never think that he would commit suicide, I actually wrote that to our sheriff here, that I think it's real fishy that Rod Kaufman supposedly died of suicide, and 2 days later Mom dies under mysterious circumstances, and that happened on December 7th, 2011. December 20th, okay, and that's the night that the ex-wife called the police at my house, and they put me into a car that had a baggie of marijuana laying in the seat, okay? And so the threat of being framed was very clear without a word being said. And and then they told me we better not be called over here again for this stuff. Well, the reason that here, 5 weeks later, when I'm ambushed and shot with burglar alarms on my house, the reason I didn't call the police is because I had been threatened on that night, on December 20th. But after they left, there was some interesting things that were said that night. And one of them, the ex-wife tells me, she says, we're creating a document trail on you. Okay. So now in retrospect, I'm looking back at that I'm believing that these corrupt police were creating a document trail on me to cover up my murder. I mean, I think that's valid. I think that's, especially recently, I just got that message from the ex-wife's former boyfriend that said that she was planning my murder with corrupt police to steal my life insurance. That's a recent video I just made. The other thing that she said that night, she said, Danny said, well, just take your house. Okay. Well, obviously, Danny is a main player. Whoever Danny is, stealing a person's home, their life savings from them is a big deal, right? I mean, that's a huge thing right there, especially when I'm ambushed and shot, a few weeks later. But I asked my brother, Danny, that doesn't talk to me no longer, did you say this, Danny? Nope, wasn't me. Wasn't me. I don't know nothing about the crimes there, and I'm not helping you. And so that's where I've been, and that's the frustration that I've had as having to deal with death threats and people trying to murder me and all the other crimes, and my family not standing behind me. But that's what she said that night, and it was also the night that I told her, I'm cutting my losses. I want a divorce. So it was on that night I said I'm done. That was the last straw. It became real obvious that she wasn't on my side, and at first she was pretending, that yeah, somebody crawled across the attic, and I'd come home, she'd tell me all these stories. We tear gassed the house together, and then 18 months after the fact, she's calling me crazy and all this stuff, it's a, 100% turnaround, 180 turnaround, from when she was here, and because she was pretending is what was happening. And sadly, it looks like my family has been pretending. And then we get a whole bunch of people pretending, and so anyways, December 30th is when she moved out. Okay. But she didn't take all her stuff, but she got out before the New Year's holiday. And I'm sure she had plans and she wanted to, be free and, out on town or whatever for New Year's, And so, she got, packed up some clothes and left. Okay. So we were separated, officially separated at that time. On January 4th, and not too long after that, my son comes down for late Christmas with his family, Jolene, and my granddaughters, Kylie and Cadence, and so and his little brother lives here, Preston Corgill. I think he's born in Odessa and lived here in Midland at the time, and so he comes over here because Josh was here, and so there's some interesting conversations that night. And one thing Josh told me that on the night that Mom died, on December 7th, that him and Jolene heard somebody during the middle of the night in Dad's bedroom, a female talking to Dad in the middle of the night. Okay. Well, the only other people in the house was me and the ex-wife. Okay. And I've suspected that I was being drugged. She was a nurse, carried hypodermic needles. I was finding these round bruises on tops of my thighs, and I remember that night that Mom died, she kept asking me, "You want to take a pill for her sleep?" "No, I don't need that. I don't need that." And and then later, that's on January 4th, when Josh shows up, he tells me that story, that somebody was there, a female was in Dad's room. And so I'm thinking I was knocked out, and that ex-wife was talking to my dad. I think I've long felt like that ex-wife knows something what happened to my mom, and that I don't know. Okay. The other things that happened during that time is Josh, and we're sitting out in the garage, and he says, "Dad," he says, "it just don't make any sense. Somebody going somewhere and and going into a tunnel and coming back over to this house." And he looked over at Preston and they giggled. Okay, this is my son. Okay, I mean, your children. I mean, if you're a parent, your children. Okay, they got some secret here, is what it happened between Preston and my son. Because he giggled. It just doesn't make no sense. That's funny because, 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, I'm crawling out of my hands and knees, ambushed and shot by somebody under my home, and that was the crimes I had been reporting, so I feel like my son, and my son doesn't talk to me anymore either. I feel like my son. The other thing is, and I just did a video yesterday, I was talking about his grandmother, Ann Calloway, that was in Amarillo, and they come in from Amarillo, drove in from Amarillo. When they got here a day early without calling, by surprise. I come home from work, and when I drove up, they're parked in front of my house, and they're wearing holsters and guns, guns. It's kind of weird, Well, what's going on here, And she tells me that my daughter, Jennifer, the oldest daughter that doesn't talk to me, that moved away, they had called her or whatever. Okay. So I'm thinking Jennifer knows something's going on, knows what's going on here. It's like everybody knows what's going on but me, is what I feel like. And then so, but then I was reading this note that I got from Ann Keller. "I didn't even know Josh was down there. He only come down there because of Jennifer." And that's like, no, he didn't. He come down for a late Christmas. It was January 4th. Well, I hadn't seen him for Christmas. We had I had gifts for the family. You know what I mean? We spent Christmas every year together. And she lived in Amarillo with Josh, and she didn't know Josh was coming to Midland with them girls, with her granddaughters. No, I don't think so. That was a lie. And then her husband dies, and she ends up later marrying my dad. That was that video yesterday. Okay. So anyways, that was that conversation when Josh, and then the next morning, Don Calloway dies. Ann Calloway, his granddad, he knocks on the door, tears in his eyes, he's crying, and his granddad died in Amarillo, so he had to leave, And actually, I was, it saddened me because I really thought I had family backing me at the time. I thought he'd come down here to help me. In retrospect, I'm not so sure that was what was going on. But you know, I know at the time that's what he was pretending, right? And I hadn't had anybody to help me. You know, I've got these people breaking into my home, and I can't get the police to do anything. It don't matter how much proof you have, you know. And so that was January 5th, okay? And so Don Calloway dies. And you know, and not part of this movie, but then later my dad ends up marrying Ann Calloway. You know, that's real odd, you know. And then I'm not invited to the wedding. She made sure of it. And I didn't talk to my dad last 3 years of his life. That was the video I just made. Okay. January 14th, I recognized somebody was trying to come into my bedroom, right? And you know, and I get this idea. I was worried they were going to kick in the back door, like I believe happened when Mike Lawhon died, because the back door was kicked in, you know. And so I get this idea to put electricity on the doorknob, you know, and I think that stopped this home invasion, probably saved my life that night on January 14th. Remember, I've been reporting these burglaries for over a year at this time. And you know, after I shot and got out of the hospital, I looked at the obituaries and I found where a young landman attorney died on the same day. Okay. And so with other, that's a longer story than that, but with other investigation, I'm suspecting that he died in my hallway. He grabbed that handle and got electrocuted, and his friends looked over, you know, that were with him, and you know, and they didn't call police. They let him die. You know, instead of calling for an ambulance and trying to save their friend's life, they didn't want to go to jail, so they let their friend die, you know. And of course, who they blame? They're trying to blame me, and they're breaking in my home. And keep in mind, they didn't even come in my front door. They come in from the underground entrance, because the doors were you know, secured. You couldn't open them, you know. And so that was on January 14th, and Matt Hyman dies. And that's a longer story about that, about putting electricity on the doorknob. And a couple of days after that, then the ex-wife comes by my house, and she brings me my life insurance booklets, okay? And I didn't know they were gone. That's when I found out they were gone. And as soon as I opened the door, and she's there, and she says, "Hey, you sleeping?" She knew about that night on January 14th when I put electricity on the doorknob and there's people trying to come in my bedroom, you know. What I call that, the first murder attempt, because 2 weeks later I'm ambushed and shot, you know. Anyway, she brings me back my life insurance book. That's when I found out it was gone. Them life insurance books showed that if her friend, Rosie Rodriguez, the detective, you know, that they went to grade school with, rules my murder an accident, then it adds an extra $500,000. But that's on top of everything else, because there's already a basic life insurance, and the house was the big deal because of the underground facility, the oil show parties, and the hidden access and all that. That's the big prize, is the home. And at the time, I'm tear gassing the attic, and I'm calling law enforcement about these criminals, you know. And the problem with on the police side is they've got a large group of police that are working with organized crime, with the burglaries and the thefts and the rigging the homes and I believe covering up the murders and involved in the murders, you know. And so that's how come they wouldn't, when I was reporting crime, you know, it looks like they were trying to plan my murder instead of arrest the criminals committing the crimes against me. And I'm suspecting they might have murdered the guy that lived here before me for the same reason. Maybe he called law enforcement, reported crime, and not knowing that there was corrupt law enforcement involved, you know. And that's what happened to me. And so my sister-in-law told me after I shot, Mitzi Webb tells me she saw them books, and they were only gone from when we separated on the 30th till when she brought them back right there after the 14th. For only 2 or 3 weeks was them life insurance booklets gone from my house. But during that time, my sister-in-law, Mitzi Webb, told me she saw them. You know, so law enforcement needs to talk to her, find out where she saw them at, why and how and all of that, and ask some questions. And it confirmed my story that she took them life insurance books. Also real important, because the former boyfriend, Arthur Welch, of the ex-wife, just posted on Facebook here just a week ago and tagged me on the Facebook post that she was planning my murder with other corrupt police to steal my life insurance. And he said the last thing she said to her is, "I'll have you shot too." That's what the ex-wife told him. "I'll have you shot too." That "too" was on the other on the end of that. And I have that. You know, that's in a video and been posted on Facebook. January 22nd. Okay. The ex-wife comes by with a pickup truck, and we load her things up. I already had them in the garage, already had them boxed up. And while she was gone, I'm packing and loading stuff up. And I was also giving her some of my furniture, because when I met her, she was living in an apartment. She didn't even have any furniture, you know. So I'm giving her furniture. She's moving over to Lubbock, and she's a nurse or whatever. Okay. There's some very interesting conversations happen while we're there. But one thing she tells me, that my family is on a secret ski vacation, okay, that I wasn't invited to, you know. And keep in mind that I'm ambushed and shot a week later with my phone lines cut, okay. And so you know, that the other thing she tells me is that my dad, she said about 15 years earlier, my dad had an affair with a woman named Pat Mason, okay. And it almost broke up my family, and everybody in my family knew about it but me. Ain't that weird? You know what I'm saying? I had just met her here in Midland, okay, and I'm from Hobbs or whatever, and here she knows more about my family than I do, okay. She knows the family history more than I do, okay. And she's telling me this. Dwayne and Pat Mason were longtime friends of mom and dad. They lived over in Odessa, and Dwayne worked for CSI, for Compressor Systems Incorporated, and made a lot of money over there, okay? And then they ended up getting divorced, and Pat was living in Weatherford or whatever. And I wondered if there was a connection with Dwayne, maybe CSI, the underground old show parties, you know, the connection to the prostitution parties, human trafficking, etc. I don't know that, but maybe so. Maybe that's the connection. And so after I'm shot, Dad tells me that he's going to marry Pat Mason. I never told him that. The ex-wife told me that story, that what had happened 15 years earlier, whatever, you know. And so he sells the home in Hobbs, the one at the lake, and moves to Weatherford, and he's up there for a month or two, and then he moves back. He changes his mind and lived over in Lovington, and then he ends up marrying Ann Calloway, my first mother-in-law, you know. And that was that video, you know, that's how come I have a son with my stepsister. That was the video I just did on that. Okay. And so the other things that are said there, I tell the ex-wife, this is why we're loading up the stuff in this truck. And I say, I know about the tunnels. I've already called the DEA. And that concerns her, you know, and she's thinking about it, and I'm sure she's thinking the DEA is going to come over, they're going to find the tunnels, they're going to bust everybody involved and all that. I think that's what she was really thinking about, concerned about. And she looks me in the eye and says, I'm not a part of a prostitution ring. I hadn't said anything about prostitution. I said I knew about the tunnels, you know. And I think what she was doing, she was asking me to not get her involved. She was telling me that these tunnels were connected to a prostitution ring. That's who's behind the rigging of the Holmes underground facility. All of it's a prostitution ring. And she was asking me not to get her involved. I think that's really what she was asking me that day. And so so then there we go. And there we're at January 28th. Well, you know, and I've gone over that, you know. We know now, evidence showed me that I'd come home from the grocery store. I noticed that somebody had been in my house once again. You know, here I'd been reporting these burglaries to the police, to the Texas Rangers, the FBI, and you know, and I couldn't get any, you know, I couldn't get them to stop. You know, they're still going on to this day. That's because this home's rigged. You know, that's before I found out about all the other homes that are rigged. You know, and so anyways, I get this idea to tie wire my spare door shut. And I did this because the ex-wife had already told me there was a trap door in this house. I didn't know where it was at. You know, I figured it was under the carpet somewhere and probably in a bedroom or something, you know. So I got 3 bedrooms. I only need one. So them 2 bedrooms, and then I got 2 baths. I only need one of them. So I used tie wire, and I tie wired all them doors shut, you know. And that compartmentalized my home, you know. And that way I'm not in here and you know, and they're sneaking through this door and going down the trap door and they're gone or whatever, you know, compartmentalize my home, okay. What I know now that I didn't know then is when I come home, I notice somebody's in the house, and I tie the door shut. I trapped a burglar in my guest bathroom. Okay? And I found that out because when I got out of the hospital after being shot, the door was torn off the wall, from the hinges were torn off the wall, and there were pry marks on the inside top door jamb where somebody had used a tool to try to pry the door open. Okay, and so it was real clear that somebody was trapped in there. Okay, in that bathroom when I was shot. Okay, and so you know, here's what I suspect. I also know, because I got the police reports, that you know, I crawled out at 10:42. The reason I crawled out is because my phone lines were cut. You know, I had no communications as is to save my life. And then so just 19 minutes later, at 11:01, we see Martin County Sheriff John Woodward and the late Sheriff Deputy Mike Naylor arrive. Okay, their names are not on the police report, but they're on camera. We see them. Took me 6 years to get them identified. Had to offer a reward. The private investigator finally identified them. So they're here at 11:01. And then the next year in 2019, I find out there was a police report all along that had been illegally withheld because I had subpoenaed it in 2013 before the protective order here, and it was being hidden from me because it's incriminating. It has incriminating evidence on it. And what it shows me is that 5 officers, Davis, Dickey, Chatwell, Angel, and Hale, were at or in my home, and they wasn't seen arriving. Okay, remember, it saw me crawl out. It saw Woodward and Naylor arrive, and then it shows that Davis and Dickey are here, but they're not seen arriving. Okay. And it's time stamped. Lieutenant Dickey, Midland Lieutenant Dickey, is inside my home at 11:05. Okay, and they're here at 11:03 and inside my home at 11:05 because he says, "Oh, we're booby traps here," and that was a lie because there ain't no booby traps here. And I mean, if there were, they'd be in the evidence, and none in the evidence. That was another lie. I mean, there's lots of lies there. But it put them inside my house. It put Dickey inside my house at 11:05 and not seen arriving on the camera. That's why they withheld that police report, because that showed. Well, how can that be? It be because they come from the trap door from where I shot, the now removed trap door. What happened to the trap door? They covered it up when I was in the hospital. That's what happened because they tried to murder me from it. Okay, and here's what it looks like. Now we know that 5 police were under my house. Okay. And so, and the ex-wife had even pretty much told me in so many words that a lot of people were here. So I believe there was a party going on in an underground facility that's in the backyard. Google Maps shows that, whatever. That's believed where the old show parties were at and whatever. Maybe they were having a swinger party, prostitution, pedophile party, whatever. But I believe a lot of people were here. But we got people with guns, these police, Davis, Dickey, Chatwell, Angel, and Hale. They're under my home when I'm shot. Okay. Burglars trapped in that bathroom. I'm on the other side of the door with a gun. It's a dire situation for them. Okay, right? I mean, because if you're a corrupt police and you have been working with the burglars to break into homes, to burglarize, terrorize, and steal, they're stealing services, heating, cooling, electricity, all that, your privacy, and all that. And so they're working with organized crime. That's what it is, organized crime. It's going on all over the place, and it's very lucrative, I'm sure. And so they can't arrest the burglar because that's who they're working with, right? That's when I think they decided to kill me and then blame me for it, And of course now, when I shot, all I had was this crazy story. Burglar alarms going off in the attic. Somebody under my home shoot me. But now that ain't the case no more. Now I have absolute proof I wasn't shot with my gun. We know somebody under my home shot me, right? That's a fact. We just don't know who, but we know somebody under my home shot me. We got multiple people documented saying that there's tunnels, underground facilities here. One of them ran for sheriff recently. Joe Lozano said the late Sheriff Gary Painter used to hang out in the underground facilities here, on a recording. And that's only one of many people, okay? And so we know they're here for sure. And then we got homeowners all over the place documenting, reporting people in the attic. This is widespread racketeering and organized crime. That's what's going on. And so it looks like that these police tried to kill me and then blame me for it. One I saw on a report that MPD officer Chandler wrote says, due to paranoia, Mr. Webb caused himself to suffer a gunshot wound. Now keep in mind, I wasn't shot with my gun and I was home minding my own business, right? By myself. Okay. You know what that is? And I've said this before. Here's a good analogy. That's like saying Sharon Tate caused Charles Manson and his gang to break into her house and murder her. Does that sound idiotic? It's Sharon Tate's fault that Manson and his gang went to her house and murdered her. And that is what Officer Chandler wrote. She is saying that it's my fault. Some criminals with guns broke into my home and tried to murder me. That is how idiotic, criminal, dirty. I mean, I've called them the dirty of the dirty. And the last I heard, they're still cops. So I got a feeling they're still lying on police reports. They're still hiding evidence. They're still tampering with evidence. And these crimes are still going on. They're still breaking my house. I'm sure they're breaking all them other homes. And I can't seem to get anything done about it. I'm gonna show you pictures of that ski trip, and this is about the secret ski trip. And of course, it's very hurtful. And and I hope my family wasn't up there planning my murder. And maybe You know, I mean, they're the only ones that can explain it. I can't explain it. You know, if somebody threatened them or come to them and says, we're going to kill Buddy if you don't help us or whatever, you know, you have to do this. I don't know, you know, but they've got to explain it. You know, somebody, you know, they have to explain that. But, you know, I'm sure records are going to show there was a secret ski trip and I wasn't invited. It's Buddy Midland.